Oh, congratulations. What a powerful moment and what a powerful film. You should all feel very proud. We feel extremely fortunate to have this opportunity to have not only Amanda and Anita, but to have Chloe, Lily, and Sadie with us for this very special evening. And I would love to start maybe with you, Amanda and Anita. It's such a powerful coming of age story about these very courageous women created by empowered women. And so I would love to, for our audience to learn a little bit on the genesis of how this project came about and your collaboration. If you could maybe say a few words, just begin.
Sure. Well, I think you should know that Chloe is my niece. Hello. Is it not working? It's working, right? That was my mom, by the way, telling me I wasn't projecting. Chloe is my niece. For me, all films, all creative projects start with a moment, an image. And when my brother and my sister-in-law told me that they were having Chloe's bat mitzvah at the wall in Jerusalem, that image of Chloe surrounded by our big Jewish family and everything that had to happen in order for that moment to happen, and all the hands I knew had, touched her along the way, I just asked if I could film a bat mitzvah. So that's really how it started.
And Anita, how did you get involved? If you could, was this your first collaboration with Amanda?
Yeah, Amanda and I were connected through a mutual friend who had an inkling that we, might bring, be able to work together on this. And at that point, Amanda had been following Lily, Sadie, and Chloe for a while now. They were sort of putting together the footage and seeing where the story was going to go, and just starting to talk about maybe going to China together and what that might look like. And I had just come off of filming in China for my previous film, The Farewell, with Jane, a fellow producer on this movie. And we were also like, what can we do together again? And so it was just sort of really fortuitous timing that we were connected at this sort of pivotal moment for the film. And I remember watching the sizzle reel that Amanda had put together then and just immediately cried in the room, didn't even bother to hide it, and was like, yeah, I think I have to help, her tell this story. It just spoke to me in such a deep way immediately. And so, yeah, I was really lucky to, become involved and meet these girls. Yeah.
And Chloe, Sadie, and Lily, this is such a personal journey for each of you. And it was so brave of you to share it in such a public way. Did it take a lot of convincing from Amanda and Anita to get you to become involved? Or did you feel okay to be opened up in this way? Did it evolve more organically? Or, if you could share a little bit about how this process affected your individual processes that we saw through the film.
I would say that it happened very organically. Like, it was started with the filming of my bat mitzvah, and my Aunt Amanda made sure I knew that this was only going to be a home movie, that I didn't let it get to my head or whatever. So, this isn't going anywhere. And clearly, it grew a bit, and it just happened very fast, I would say.
4.5 years.
It's quite a journey. How about you, Sadie?
I was just kind of like, oh, who wouldn't want to be part of a documentary? Like, that's kind of cool. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm on board. Yeah.
Well, actually, for me, I was in high school and I was in class, and I got a message from Amanda, and it's not a normal message you get every day. I think we talked on FaceTime, and I didn't show my face. It was like, oh my gosh, identity theft. And so I literally kind of hid my face, and then she popped up. She's like, hi, I'm Amanda, and I was like, oh, okay, she's real. I was like, okay, this is real. And then my mom and I definitely had to think about it, because if I'm going to be involved, my mom and my family are too. And so we watched her other film, Step, and then my mom and I are bawling our eyes out. We're like, we have to do it, we're going to do it. So that's how I became a part of this.
And at that time, at what point of your relationship with each other were you? Or did you find yourself through the process of the making of this film? You could talk about how kind of your individual relationships evolved in correlation with the filming of the documentary.
It was very weird. They were strangers, and quickly we became really close, and it happened very fast, I would say. Like, there was just like an underlying connection that like you just don't have with other people.
And I think to add on to that, like with filming, that's something we all, because I mean, I can't talk with my friends and be like, oh my gosh, I filmed and I did this and I did this. That's something that really brought us together, was filming, is something that we had in common. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely awkward at first, but then like, I don't know, being like stuck on a trip to China together, spending every hour, you kind of become like really close. So yeah.
That was what was really beautiful for all of us, like behind the scenes, and the parents and siblings to watch, was the three of them, you know, kind of fall in love with each other. And, you know, those were the moments where I just took like my filmmaking hat off, and I was just an aunt, and I was just excited for her to have these cousins, and excited for our family and the other families to have this like one big family. And that's really what it feels like. And, you know, Sadie and Lily feel like my nieces now too. We're really are all family.
No, that's wonderful. I mean, and you can really sense through the documentary just the immense trust and love and optimism, and, you know, just that feeling of coming together as a family. I think that gets conveyed so powerfully through the film. So maybe we can take another little tack and thinking about identity, right? Because I think all three of you, you know, grew up in what it seemed like to be very homogenous communities, you know, where there probably weren't a lot of other Asians in your orbit. I mean, and for myself, I'm an ABC. I grew up, you know, with Chinese parents, but in a very homogenous community in Michigan. And so, you know, for me, as growing up as one of the few, not even just Asians, but minorities in my community, you know, I think it took me a long time to just really get very centered in my own sense of self and my identity as an American, but also as a Chinese American woman. And so I wonder for each of you, you know, just if your experiences growing up in those similar kinds of communities, I mean, and again, that's just my conjecture from the documentary, if that inspired your desire to, you know, to seek your roots in China. If you could talk a little bit about that experience.
At first, I didn't really think much about it. I honestly kind of just thought that I fit in right with, like, I guess my homogenous community. And honestly, just like over the filming process, I realized like I have a different identity from all of them. And it's kind of scary and new, but it kind of makes me excited for the film to come out, because then people can learn about that side of my identity.
I would say the same thing. I had a really good friend group like growing up, and my family was always very supportive. I think what made me more want to do this was I went through a hard time in high school, and adoption was something I really pushed aside growing up, just because I was very content and happy with my life. But I think kind of pushing it aside, a lot of the emotions kind of built up as I got older, and I matured, and I think that's when I realized that I wanted to learn more about my heritage and about my adoption side.
I think that just kind of going off of Lily and Sadie, like when you grow up in like those types of communities, you don't really necessarily know that you're different. Like, you know that you're different, you don't look like them, but like you do all the same things as them, and like you participate in like normal kid activity. So I think that like just like taking a part in the film is really like a step away from that and really just like connecting, going back to like that small child that was like kind of like left behind kind of in your life.
And Amanda, from the documenter's perspective, did you have, once you started realizing that this was going to be more than a home movie, how did you kind of structure the trajectory or the focus of what you were creating, or were you allowing it to evolve organically, and it was only after and maybe what was the end point that you realized, like, okay, this is the story, and this is how I'm going to shape the story from, what I've collected through 4.5 years?
Well, I would say I think I knew it was a real movie when I had gone and met Sadie and her family and spent amazing time with them in their home. And then I went and met Lily and her wonderful family. And I thought what they were all saying was so similar and yet so different. And then they each had their own individual journey. And I just knew that I wanted to follow that journey and watch them, come of age. And they were at all these different moments. So that was really the propulsion, was to tell these very unique feminine stories. But I think, meeting Leo Howe really changed the engine of the movie, and she became our engine because she led us on this odyssey that we did not totally expect. And it was one of self-discovery and watching her work, and then having her be so connected to the girls in such a personal way. And that was, that's what happens in documentaries. You just don't know what's going to happen. And that moment on the bridge when she tells the story about her family, that was the first time I heard that story. And her name, she said, my name is Leo Howe because it means, my grandmother gave me the name because it means everything will be okay. And that was when I thought, okay, like, I need to really, she's going to lead us on the journey, and I need to follow her, and she will take good care of them, and she will take good care of these families, and whatever she says, I'm going to be there for.
That's fabulous. And in speaking about the families, I think adoption and this whole journey is complicated for everybody. It's not just for, Chloe, Lily, and Sadie, but I think, their families were so generous and open and vulnerable also, because, you don't know what you're going to find, or how it will affect people emotionally, and how it will change your families. And I wonder if you could all speak to kind of, has your relationship with your parents changed at all through this experience? Or, if you could talk a little bit about that evolution as well, because it's not just about this journey of searching, but also of developing.
Their parents are here, so they may not.
I know. Well, we'll do that. If you feel comfortable to share that.
I'll start. My mom might even cry. I don't know where she is, but she might cry. My mom and I have always had a really strong connection. She has always been open and very supportive of my decisions and everything I decide to do with my life. And even when I was younger, she always made it known that if I wanted to find my birth parents, she would be there for me, like 100% of the time, backing me up. And she never made it about herself. Like, my mom was always so selfless. And she would always be like, I will be here for you. Like, this is about you and like your experience and your emotions. So I would say that my mom's and I's relationship hasn't changed. I think it's more grown.
I learned so much from watching the parents, and how they were there when they needed to be there, and how they pulled back, and how they let the three of them be together or with Leo Howe. And just, I think all of us, our whole crew, we learned so much about parenting from watching them let them grow up.
And also about being a family, because I think one thing that's so important about this documentary is that you create your family just as much as you are born to them, or that you're related by blood, and I think that all of us especially in this time, we really need to come together and create families for ourselves in our communities. And I think I'll ask you a question, Anita, because so many of the films that you have been focusing on are really about empowerment and about family as well. And so maybe if you could talk a little bit about the elements of this documentary that really spoke to you, or that, that you find most compelling.
I think there were so many things about their stories that inspired me right away. And I think one of the strongest things is this, this opportunity to witness this coming of age process as young women. I mean, I was once a young woman. I think I'm still kind of a young woman. So I'm still figuring stuff out, and I'm just watching them, go through this so bravely on their own, but, with the support of each other. I think that's ultimately what family is about, right? However you want to define it, it's that support system that you find or create for yourself in confronting all these sort of maybe tougher moments in your life, especially in these pivotal moments where you really have no experience to inform where this is going to go or how you're going to handle things. So I felt like, especially now more than ever, right, it can be very easy to feel alone in tough moments. And I think hopefully, this film can, kind of remind people that you're able to reach out or inspire people to reach out. We really want this film to be something you can watch with, who you even want to watch it with, and have those conversations between generations, between, differences or similarities, but really come together around the idea that, we can kind of be there to support each other through these things.
But I think there's such a sense of empowerment also, right? I mean, growing up, again, in the United States, as a Chinese woman or girl at that time, there really weren't so many, until very recently, role models to aspire to, or to see, that person looks like me, or I can relate to that. And I think, what the three of you have been able to achieve through your participation and for being so vulnerable and open about your stories is going to be so inspiring to so many young girls and young women. And so I'm wondering if there's any kind of specific message or idea that you are hoping that others can learn or be inspired by through your participation in this film.
I would say something I would want people to get out of this film is just how interconnected everyone's stories are. I think especially watching it like the second time around, just like seeing like how much like you have an impact on other people is just so crazy. Like I'm thinking specifically of Mr. Chen's daughter and how like guilty she felt for being able to like have or like live a life with her parents, and just like the existence of like knowing her sister is out there is, I don't know, I just think that you have such a powerful impact whether or not you're in someone's life or you're not physically in their life.
I would definitely say it's a really scary journey. Like, it's a lot of emotions that you didn't know you even had, a lot of stuff you'll open up and dig up, but also, I mean, like, there's like a few little treasures you'll dig up too along the way. Like, I got to meet all these lovely ladies, and that has been so amazing. And yeah, it's been easy, and it's been also really difficult too at the same time, but I'd say it's worth it in the end.
Going off of what Sadie said, sorry, I'm thinking. I had to be in my head, I just kind of lost it. I think it is important to be open-minded, and I think it's also important to make sure that your mental health is a priority, because, I mean, maybe for all of us, but especially for me, this opened up so many different emotions that I never thought I had, and it really reached a point that I didn't expect, and I think it really pushed me out of my comfort zone. But I think what I want out of the movie is for adoptees to understand it's okay to be sad, confused, or upset, because it is hard to handle all these emotions at once. So I hope they know that it is okay to have all these emotions and that they aren't alone.
No, that's really wonderful, all three of you. And Anita, just this idea of, agency for Asians in cinema. Have you found through your professional career a shift in kind of being able to have a seat at the table and having a voice? If you could maybe speak to that a little bit, as somebody working in the field.
Sure, yeah. I think, just speaking about maybe the industry in the US, right? I think Asian American stories are finally having that moment that it's long deserved, but, been eluded for all the wrong reasons. Even just the past few years alone, the kind of changes have been quite monumental, and it took, a few of those projects to finally break through in a big way and to sort of showcase the power of the community when it comes together. And I think what I'm really excited about, and even this film was part of, an opportunity here to tell more different kinds of stories about the community, right? Whether it is fiction film, nonfiction film about young women, whoever it is, I think there's just so much more to mine from. And I think I'm really excited about more young filmmakers to come out and finally feel empowered to, take that center stage. I'm excited to see like how they're going to keep telling their stories. I think it's just like all the shapes and sizes that are finally, going to kind of come out and find their way to reach their audience. I think there's sort of no better time for that to be happening.
And I think from your perspective, Amanda, I mean, with Found and with Step, which is also a bit of a coming of age and kind of, young women coming together, that seems to be a resonant theme in your work. And maybe if you could speak to that a little bit as well from your perspective.
I'd say every one of my projects is a story of a woman coming of age. I always joke I have a closet full of ideas and they all have that theme in common. I feel it's important to be someone who tells stories of the heart. And that's really what I strive to do, and speak to people that may not feel they're always spoken to, and for to just really be there to present just the truth, just what the facts are and what is happening, and not put any opinion on top of it, but to tell human stories. That's really what I want to do. That's what I hope we've done with Found, not just these young women's stories, but those stories of the nannies and the stories of the parents, and just to see China and just to see those images and what it is and what it's like, and not have it be a news story, and just have it be pictures and portraits of people's lives. There's an ancient Chinese proverb that I love about the invisible red thread, and in Judaism, red ribbon is good luck too. And we're all connected by this thread. When you're born, it's tied around your ankle, and the thread may, tangle, it may stretch, but it will never break. And I really feel that, we are all connected in that way. And if you follow that red thread and you have the courage, it can really be an amazing journey.
That's really beautiful. I mean, and I think you touched upon something in your explanation that really conveys the power of art to illuminate larger issues in society, because I think it's not just the story of these three young women coming of age, but it's also a country coming of age. I mean, looking at the extreme shifts, the socio-political shifts in China, and how it profoundly affected generations, at least 2 generations of Chinese citizens, and the international ramifications that has. I mean, and so in that way, it's this microcosm, but you're talking about a much more macro dynamic that is really so, influential in, like what you're saying with the red thread, I mean, across continents and across generations.
And it also applies to, not just young women who were born in China and adopted into American families. It applies to anyone who has been adopted, who has, a past they have a question mark, whether it's a parent they didn't know or, whatever the story may be. Like, I just feel everyone has a story and everybody wants to fill that in. And I think everyone will relate to a different journey that these girls have gone on, and they will identify with something different in it.
No, certainly. I mean, and from the journey that, from the point that the documentary ends, for each of you, Chloe, Lily, and Sadie, have you continued to search for your birth parents, or has your connection to your, ethnic heritage grown, or do you feel like it was, you satiated that part of that inquisitivity, and you feel more at peace now? It would be interesting to hear how this journey has continued to reverberate in your life, if it has.
I would definitely say like I've I've learned more about my identity and trying to find my roots, and realizing that I'm different, but like that can also be a good thing. But honestly, the journey, it was a lot of more emotions than I expected at first. I didn't really think about it all too much at first, but it opened up a lot, and I'm not open to like not finding them, but I don't think I want to put in as much energy as I did. Just want to focus on like the people around me now and everything.
Right now, I would say I am not wanting to find my birth parents as of right now. I mean, my DNA is already out there, so if something pops up, I'll be open-minded to it. But that is not something I want to do right now or for a while. I think going to China with Chloe and Sadie, that trip was very healing for me. And from high school, whenever I was upset about my adoption, it was a great healing process for all of us, I think. And it's kind of like it put like a Band-Aid on all the wounds and everything. So yeah, that's kind of it.
For me, I would say that it is definitely a very emotional ride. It's a very emotional journey. I think it was just the start. I think it's takes so much time to process things. I think something I've learned is definitely don't rush the healing process. I feel like every time I'm close to getting there, just something else happens, and I discover this new patch that just needs to be worked through. I'm not looking for my birth parents at this time, but I think that for Lily, this has definitely been a healing process, and I think it's just the very beginning of it for me. I mean, there's just so much to work through.
And Amanda, your experience being a mother, had that shaped kind of how you approached the project, and the angle that.
Yeah, it's very emotional for me too. The girls know that. When they're crying on camera, I promise you I am crying off camera. I'd say the night that Lily was talking to Leo Au and she didn't want to look at the pictures of Mr. Chen, Lily and I went off, and I just looked at her and I was like, we always put, and I'm really proud that the girls' emotional well-being was the most important thing above any filmmaking, and they knew that I, loved them and I wanted them to be okay, and I didn't really, the movie was secondary to that. So that night I looked at Lily and I said, I was scared. I was like, this is not a good idea. This is not good. And I looked at her and I said, we can stop. Let's just we can stop right now. And she looked right at me and she's like, no way. We are not stopping. We are doing this. And these young women gave us strength, all of us, to keep going and to tell their stories, because it is so important that their stories are heard for so many people. And we're so excited for Wednesday. I said the wrong day the other day. I literally don't know what day it is. We've been, running around the world, but I'm excited for the world to see this on Wednesday, and that's why we're so excited Netflix is our partner, because it really has the chance to have the biggest impact. And even though that is scary for all of us, as a mother, as an aunt, as surrogate aunt, I know that it's going to have a big impact.
Well, it really had a big impact on me, and I'm sure on our audience as well. And I'm positive that it will have a really powerful presence in the world. So I really want to thank all of you for this gift that you've given to us and for your time. So I think we have a couple of minutes. If there's any questions from the audience, we have a microphone down here. Please feel free to come down and ask your questions. I think there's a couple of people coming down.
You can shout it out. We can hear you.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm from the board of the Families with Children from China of Greater New York. And many of our board members are here, parents and adoptees alike. And first, I'm also adoptive mom of 4 daughters from China. They're from Guangxi province, which is right next door to Guangdong. And I first of all want to thank the girls for sharing their stories. It's a wonderful gift to us and to our kids. And also thank the parents as well for allowing that to happen. We really appreciate it. I talk to my daughters a lot about identity, and we talk a lot about what they're not. They're not fully Chinese, they're not fully American. And we finally come around to talking about what they are, which is Chinese adoptees. That is an identity, a positive one. And you guys are in the vanguard of that, and you are pioneering what that means. It's a new kind of Chinese, it's a new kind of American. So we're really proud when we see this kind of journey, and thanks for that. And I also want to ask about the process of filmmaking in China. Was it difficult? Did you have issues with the government? Did Liu Hao have trouble with the government?
Movie in China. This is who you want to be in business with. I promise you.
Definitely,
And Jane Zhang.
I think we knew going into it that if we're going to bring like 25 people to China together, we better have all our ducks in order. And so again, thanks to Jane and the team that we put together on the ground in China, we talked to every organization we needed to talk to get every permit we needed to, and through that process, also working with Liu Hao actually, and with the families, shaped the itinerary of China together. We knew some of the places we had to go, but we also wanted to leave room for exploration and, surprise and discovery. So I think the challenges were kind of ultimately normal challenges with filming a documentary and rallying around a crew of 25 people. I think thankfully now the policy is a thing of the past, and certainly it's the effects of that obviously we're still seeing, but at least right now I think it's easier to sort of approach the subject, especially because we went in knowing that it was really about the girls and them getting to know China, getting time to spend with each other. That was a backdrop, right? And it was sort of unavoidable, but really, we conveyed that our focus was about this shared journey more than anything else. So it was sort of all hands on deck and we navigated it, but it was ultimately a really fun trip for everybody. Yeah.
And did Liu Hao, was that just like her Waterloo and then she moved out of the business, or what?
I mean,
why she stopped doing the work she was doing?
I think she was in a moment in her life where she just knew that she wanted to explore more. I mean, she was so good at her job, and we were even joking with her. We're like, get ready for some phone calls to call you back. Because we would certainly recommend working with her. And again, like having her involved, it was a nice surprise for us and how much easier she made the journey for us. She was really such a great guide for us in every which way, and an emotional guide even too, in building the trust with the people we've met on the ground. Yeah, and I think she's young. She has so much heart.
Also, like, we came home January 20th, 2020, right before COVID. So she was not doing, she had like this big chunk of time where she was she wasn't working, she wasn't doing her work, and because people were not coming to China. And so she kind of decided to take a chance and try something new.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.
Hi there, I'm Zana. I'm also a director and filmmaker, and I'm also a Filipinx adopted person. So I really appreciate you three for sharing your stories with other adopted and fostered and trafficked folks like myself and like us. And I guess I'm curious, for folks who are about to embark on this process, or I guess who've been processing it for their whole lives but haven't gone as far as you have so far, what kind of advice do you have to offer, or would you like to offer based on this experience for those of us, myself included, who are maybe a little bit farther behind or at different stages in this process? And thank you again so much.
I would say just be very open-minded. I mean, we obviously we all did a lot of stuff that I think not a lot of people would be able to get to do. But also, I think one thing that we can relate to is the emotions, is to really take care of yourself and your mental health. I think that's super important because you never know how you're going to be feeling whenever you get results back, and it can get really anxious just waiting for results if you are going to submit them or whatever you're trying to find. So I think it's important to be open-minded and to take care of yourself.
I would agree with Lily. I would say, honestly, get a therapist. But like, I don't know, be gentle with yourself as well. I think be gentle with yourself, be gentle with the people around you. I think it's a very new thing to be looking into, and I think it's a lot more delicate than, like the world perceives it as.
I mean, honestly, yeah, what they said, I definitely a therapist helps, or any support system really, because you're going to have a lot of emotions through this entire journey, and you're going to need somebody to vent about it, express them to. And I think honestly having them has been a lot of help. Same with having my therapist, that has been a lot of help. So yeah, definitely have some support behind you during this journey.
You have a therapist, so I've made one step. Thank you so much.
Another question?
Hi, my name's Hannah. I am also on the board of directors for Families with Children from China. I'm an adoptee, and I'm also a social worker. My question, I guess for anyone on the stage was, given that the population of adoptees from China, it's not a small number. We're a very significant population, and we're a very significant community, as are the larger Asian adoptee diaspora. I was wondering what consults you took with this process of adult adoptees who have probably already gone through this journey and have thought about reunification. And I was wondering if they were consulted throughout this film.
Actually, I worked with two social workers who specialize in adoption, and I consulted with them actually when I first started from the very beginning, and they were extremely helpful. We also, my associate producer, Sandy, who was also my head of research, we spoke with a lot of different professors. We had a lot of research going in before we really kind of went down the path of finding Liu Hao and My China Roots, and then they had such an expertise. What we loved about them is that it wasn't just about adoption. It was about immersing yourself in the culture, going into these villages, being prepared to go into these villages, speaking with people face to face, and maybe not someone who is directly connected to you, but getting a sense of what happened and getting to hear it for yourself instead of seeing something on the news or in a book or in a magazine. And so that was really the best piece of advice we got. And then we were just really lucky to join forces with them. So yeah.
I think we have one last question for the evening.
Just still recovering from that. It was so emotional and so fascinating and so well done. I'm just curious, kind of going forward, how this is going to be shown, if it's going to be shown in China, and what impact that will have, and what is kind of the state of DNA testing in China. How much is it growing, and like what are the prospects from that standpoint?
Well, I'll just speak to the DNA portion of it. So Amanda Phillips, who was actually with us in New York, we all got to meet her this weekend. She actually put her DNA on 23andMe and then was contacted by the Chinese company that is the 23andMe of China, and they asked her if they could take her DNA and put it on their website. So that's how that happened for her. It is certainly growing, but I think the educating the community on DNA, what it is, that it can be trusted, that work still needs to happen for sure, I think, on the ground in China. And I'll let Anita kind of answer the rest of the
It's
question.
pretty similar to what I was saying before. I think there's more of a there's more of an attitude shift towards wanting to, in terms of thinking about heritage and connection, and maybe again, like similar to this journey that we witnessed, like answering questions combined with the way technology has evolved. So Even Mind China Roots is one of many, many different organizations in China we could have worked with. There's a lot of DNA companies that they also work with themselves as tools. So the tools are all out there, and I think it's actually quite active and probably increasingly more active. In terms of if the film will show in China, Netflix is an amazing global platform. China is one of the places where they're not, sort of active in.
I just want to thank our panel again, Amanda, Anita, Sadie, Lily, and Chloe. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your passion, and thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank